The Friday Rugby Preview with Stuart Cameron.
Hello and welcome to the Friday Rugby Preview, your weekly update on all the Borders clubs, including the East League teams from the area. Robin Purdy's joined me again, and we start with a look back at last weekend's results after 8 rounds of competition now in the Premiership and the National 1 leagues, and of course one less for National 2, who joined the party 1 week later. So we'll start with the Premiership and Ayr 45, Melrose 9. No great surprise there, very competitive by half-time, but a ruthless second half from Ayr. How many times have we said that this season?
Several. We've said it. They march on, another 5-pointer in the bag. Doesn't look like a catastrophic result for Melrose. You know, what teams will fare worse down at Millbrae than Melrose did. You know, if they could have got a point out of that, it would have been, you know, a brilliant result. But yeah, Ayr march on and Melrose have got, you know, other fish to fry, so to speak. At what point do we start talking about Ayr going through the campaign with 5-pointers every week?
Yes, I know, and we don't think that's ever happened.
As far as I'm aware, it's not, but they've got Heriots to play twice and Watsonians at home, so if they can pick up 5 points in the next week or two at Heriots, then it's on.
That will be absolutely amazing, won't it?
Oh, it would be ridiculous, quite frankly, but that's the good thing they've got going on down there, and all credit to them.
You have to look at the big picture as well on this, and of course it's generated a lot of chat on the offside line and other places as well, because they're very, very successful. Could they even be setting their sights on a third pro team in 5-10 years' time?
Who knows? It's a good question. You know, if they continue to rule the roost, let's say they become top dogs year after year after year, and it's cricket scores every week, then potentially they'll need to look at something else. But maybe they're not looking that far down the track at the moment. But yeah, it's just a brilliant setup down there. It's interesting you mentioned about the comments section and the various different media outlets, and particularly the offside line. It's the same every week now. It's the jealousy that comes with success, and as I've said before, unless you have a benefactor, you've not lucked out by being rich unless it's a benefactor ploughing money in. You know, Sheik comes in football and ploughs 300 million in, whatever. They've not lucked out down at Ayr if they have indeed got plenty cash, because it's years and years and years of business acumen that brings in sponsors and brings in big sponsors at that, and they're just the best at that. And from the outside looking in, they're the best at that by a long chalk, and they've not lucked out by having this money that subsequently maybe leads to having these players. It's years and decades earned.
A lot of people, of course, hark back to the amateur days. They love the amateur days, but we've been pro now. The game's been open. It's 20 odd years, isn't it, since it's gone open? So it's just, I think, Scotland has found it as a country very difficult to adapt.
Oh yeah, it's a mentality thing. It's a psyche thing. We as a people, we tend to look back rather than look forward, and we don't like other people's success and all manner of different things. And as far as they're concerned, they should just be doing their thing and not caring a jot what the people on the offside line say, or indeed pundits that come out with half-baked opinions like myself. They just continue to need to do their thing, and they'll be all right come the end of the season. But no, brilliant what they're doing down there on and off the field.
And of course, you take other sports, football, of course, dramatically. You talk about Man United, Man City, you talk about Arsenal, Chelsea, it's Liverpool. It's a business now. It's not a game, it's a business.
Oh, absolutely. And anybody, when it comes to the Premiership in Scotland, anybody that thinks it's not is living in cuckoo land. Like, they're living in cuckoo land. It's a business first and foremost. And I'm not saying rugby's becoming a byproduct, but you need to get the business side right, almost first and foremost, and then the rest will fall into place. Because if you get the business side right, you've got the money, and with the money comes the players, and with the players comes the success.
Now, one thing which I've been meaning to mention, of course, over the past few weeks, and I'm going to mention it today because it's a very important thing, and that is this new law interpretation of the tackle height. And we spoke to Grant Anderson last week after the latest Ayr victory, and he had this to say.
Refereeing, my goodness, I want to be as respectful as possible, but we're really struggling, I think, across both teams today with the inconsistencies across refereeing. It's just massively changing the landscape of a game of rugby. We've been told today that any form of dominant hit will be penalised, which I refuse to coach my players to make passive tackles, so I don't know how we're going to navigate on one. It's an absolute mess.
Now, I know obviously Grant is from Ayr, and this is a Borders programme, but it does affect Borders teams. And I know that when Stuart Johnson came up after the Peebles Jed game at the weekend, he was reluctant to go public. Grant is quite happy to go public on that, and I think a lot of people will thank him for going public because it is a concern. We'll hopefully get a referee's point of view on this as well. We obviously are well connected with Ian Hurd and Stephen Turnbull and people like that. We like to hear their interpretation, and we will get that in the next few weeks. But it seems to be having a big negative effect on the game.
Oh, it absolutely is, Stuart, and what a breath of fresh air there by Grant. It takes somebody of his standing in the amateur game to come out and say it, because it's a total and utter farce become. Now, you mentioned there, he's from Ayr and we're concentrating on Borders Rugby. Well, let me tell you about Borders Rugby. Melrose v Selkirk a few weeks ago, I lost count at 31 penalties. That was the weekend after the so-called, directive to the refs that it was to, they were to tighten up on it even more. I lost count of 31 penalties, and frankly, if I was a paying punter at that game, I'd have been wanting a refund on the gate. It was an absolute shambles, and people will stop coming. Newsflash, Bath v Saracens is on the telly. Leinster v Edinburgh is on the telly. If you're not a member, you need to go part with 12-15 quid to watch these club games that are being ruined. Not by the referees. I have great sympathy by the referees. These games are being ruined by the directive coming from the top. Do players go into rugby expecting to be decapitated by clothesline tackles? Absolutely not, and nor should they. They shouldn't expect to be smacked in the mouth, and they shouldn't expect to have their head stamped on, that kind of stuff. But that's all outlawed. Contact with the head is long since outlawed. You long since get a red card for that. That stuff's gone. But to penalise people for dominant collisions, you go into play rugby knowing you're going to get bashed about a bit. Is this all because the game, the sport as a whole, is running scared of a one-man band solicitor in England called Richard Boardman? If it is, then that is a travesty. Yes, there's a bit of a movement, but from what I'm understanding, his credibility is on the wane week by week. Anybody just needs to Google Will Green, Richard Boardman for something that came out last week to tell you kind of what he's all about. So it needs looked at. A fair and dominant hit is what the game's all about. Scoring tries, scoring points, winning games, and dominant collisions. That's what people want to see. And I just think it's become an absolute farce in recent weeks. I agree with Grant wholeheartedly there, and I'm glad he's come out and said it. And
of course, if you go in with a half-hearted tackle attempt, you're more likely to injure yourself.
Oh, well, there was a horrendous injury in the game I was at Saturday. Peebles v Jed, Ewan Murray got a horrendous arm injury. It's a rugby incident. Injuries occur. A lot more head injuries will occur. Sticking your head down about the knees or clattering off somebody's hip bone or something like that, then I sound exasperated, because I am exasperated just with how it's gone in recent weeks, and I don't put that on the refs. The refs are only policing it the way they've told to be policed, and if a decent shot to the sternum is penalisable or cardable, then the game's a bogey.
It is a talking point which is happening in the world of rugby at the moment, and as Robin's just said, it's certainly affecting the game. So Ayr 45, Melrose 9, Glasgow Hawks 32, Hawick 20 is the next one. Hawks back-to-back wins against very useful sides.
Yeah, Hawks going great now. Fair play to them. That's them up to 4th in the table. And that was a good win. I found that a tough game to call. I thought Hawks potentially could win the game. Absolutely, I didn't necessarily see it, being a 12-point victory in Hawick coming away with nothing. But yeah, Hawks upwardly mobile at the moment, and Hawick now just with something to think about. But yeah, all credit to Glasgow Hawks.
Kelso 18, Edinburgh Accies 39. It was 10-10 at half time. Accies foot on the gas in the second half and away to get the 5 points.
Yeah, stopped the rot a wee bit for Accies, or the mini rot at least. A couple of poor results the 2 weekends before, but that's a brilliant win at Poynter. Poynter's a tough place to go, and it's almost a statement win, that. Sad to see for Kelso, nothing from the game. They are right in trouble at the moment, Stuart. It pains me to say. Hawick away tomorrow, Heriots the following week, Curry away, Watsonians the following week. There ain't a massive amount of points on offer there, Stuart, if we're being candidly honest. Short of a big surprise, and Kelso running out of road a wee bit now. I'm sad to say.
Musselburgh 26, Curry 69. It was something like 50 points to 7 at half time. So Musselburgh actually got the try bonus and won the second half. Now, for a team to concede 50 points and then go out in the second half and win it with a try bonus, amazing amount of character.
Yeah, plucky enough. When I seen the score at half time, I thought, my word, that could be a ton. We could be going to see the first ton of the season. We don't see many of them at that level, if at all. But yeah, gutsy enough stuff in the second half by Musselburgh. Will a point be enough come the end of the season? Probably not, but a point against Curry in the form that Curry are in at the moment and where they're probably going to go in the coming weeks is not that bad. But yeah, Curry marching up the table now. They've got their sights firmly set on that fourth place, and the smart money for me is on them for that.
Selkirk 38, Heriots 47. Now, 85 points at Philiphaugh, 37 points for Selkirk, but coming away with 1 point. Heriots once again getting all 5.
Yeah, good win for Heriots. I mentioned that could be seen as a banana skin game for them because Selkirk have been going well this season. I think that's a brilliant result for Selkirk as well, or for any team that's not ex-Super 6. I include Melrose in this as well. For any team to pick up a point this season, home or away, against Ayr, Heriots or Watsonians is a good result for me. That, and I think Selkirk, from what I'm hearing, were almost a wee bit disappointed that they didn't come out with a wee bit more from that game, but I think that's a good result, 1 point against Heriots.
And Heriots will be a bit concerned leaking 38.
Yeah,
for the first time this season.
Yeah, possibly. But let's not forget Selkirk have got some top operators now, none more so than their hooker, who is the form hooker in the league at the moment, Corey Tate. Another 2 tries for him on Saturday there. Selkirk have got some good players, they've got a good squad, but interestingly enough, they've used the least amount of players this season from any team in the Premiership, and I think that's a good thing as well. They look settled, and there doesn't look to be too many niggly injuries in there as well.
Well, the other scoreline, Watsonians 73, Mar 0. Now, at the start of the season, if you'd told me Mar would leak 73 points in a game this season, I'd have laughed at you, but that's what's happened.
Yeah, just not travelling well at the moment, and now they've got a massive game against Melrose tomorrow, and yeah, there's 6 points between Mar and safety now, so they need to start to pick up the W's somewhere along the line. They've only won twice this season, and again, we mentioned before, how much you read into the comments on the offside line, but there's been a few comments this week, and it doesn't look like everything's rosy in the garden over there.
Well, this week's new 4th place club is Glasgow Hawks. Seems to be a new club there each week. Only 4 points separate them in 4th place and Hawick in 9th spot, which is absolutely crazy. Last week we were talking about 5 points separating 4th to 9th, so it's getting even tighter.
Yeah, it is. It's really tight in the middle. Like I say, there's a wee bit of daylight to the bottom 3 now, and the top 3 there's daylight there, and they all kick on and do their thing. So it's interesting in the middle of the table, and there's a lot of rugby to be played over the coming few weeks. Some clubs now have got some big games tomorrow in the coming weeks, and probably no more in a fortnight's time about the likes of Glasgow Hawks and about the likes of Mar at the other end of the table.
Well, into National 1 it was Biggar 24, Highland 20. That bonus point win put Biggar above Gala into 4th place. Biggar 8 bonus points, Gala 4 bonus points, so Gala's 5 wins to Biggar's 4 actually now being cancelled out with these bonus points.
Bonus points are going to have a big say come the end of the season. They always do. That's a good win for Biggar. That was another one that was tough to call. You maybe wouldn't have said that in previous seasons, but Highland seem to travel a bit better now, and Biggar have already lost at home this season to Peebles, and they nearly lost at home to Jed as well. So I think both those teams will be not despondent, or good win for Biggar, and I don't think Highland will be despondent either.
Boroughmuir 39, Gala 30. Now, Gala were very much in control, 2 yellow cards, and they lost the game.
Yeah, they did, and I was quite surprised when I seen that Boroughmuir had come back and won that, because I knew Gala had been ahead by a reasonable margin, but we spoke, Boroughmuir were going to do that to somebody sooner or later with the likes of Jordan Edmonds in the ranks. I think he got at least 1 try, maybe a couple, playing in the centre for Boroughmuir, and Boroughmuir now are back in the kind of shake-up, if you like, in terms of safety in this League of Jeopardy. They're only 4 points behind Jed now, and Jed have got to go to Meggetland a bit later in the season. So yeah, Barrowmuir right back in it and are sort of looking more up the table now with a bit less fear, I would say.
Big match, of course, last week was Glasgow Accies against GHA. Glasgow Accies at home in third position against one of the big teams, GHA, who had kind of had a bit of a wobble the previous week, so we weren't quite sure what was going to happen. Glasgow Accies getting home advantage. In the end, it was Glasgow Accies 17, GHA 34, and GHA's biggest test to date, and they came out on top.
Absolutely brilliant result. You know, we thought that might be close. For us, it was the biggest game of the day across all of the divisions, and yeah, talk about statement wins. That's a real statement win. It's almost as impressive as, you know, the shellacking they gave Stirling at home because it was away, and you know, Accies are decent. They're absolutely decent. So yeah, Stirling would have had one eye on that game as a banana skin for GHA, but not a bit of it. That's a brilliant result.
And Peebles 35, Jed Forest 24. Of course, that was the game you were at. Peebles 5 converted tries. A rare win over Jed.
Yeah, that's not happened all that often. I spoke with Graham Patterson, Peebles' coach, before the game almost about that. He'd mentioned on the preview show last week about, you know, a mental barrier maybe in some of these border games, and they've overcome that against Jed. And you know, I'd almost asked him about imposter syndrome, you know, now that they're up in National 2, do they not see themselves as, you know, equals and on a par with the Galas and the Jeds? And I think that result will go a long way to, you know, to helping out in that regard. And on the balance of power, it was a deserved balance of play. It was a deserved victory for Peebles. Jed, an understrength Jed, hung in there, but Peebles were good for the win, Stuart, and they had the game's star performer in Ewan Murray on the sort of 55 or 60 minutes he was on the pitch before that absolutely horrendous injury. And we wish him well, but what a performance in the time he was on the field.
Now we come to the final result in National 1, and we'll set this one up rather nicely because a couple of weeks ago Dundee were at home to GHA, and you quite happily would bet your brand new house on Dundee not winning that game, and it was absolutely correct. But I think we didn't even take any bets over going to Stirling County away from home, getting 19 points on the board with no reply against Stirling County at Bridge Hall. This is the bottom club without a win this season. They eventually ran out of steam. It was 60 points to 22, but it was 24-22 for a lot of the game into the second half, and then Stirling cut loose. But my goodness me, you cannot write Dundee off.
No, it's for them it'll be 19-0 up at Bridge Hall. They'll be the only team this season to have that amount of daylight between themselves and the hosts at that particular venue, I would imagine. And for them to only come away with 1 point might be seen as a wee bit disappointing, but I think if you'd asked them pre-game, you know, there's only 1 point on offer, they probably would have taken your hand off. Yeah, Stirling had a bit of a jolt there, but again, spoke about character earlier on. That's a good display of character for them to dig themselves out the hole that they're in, and it is looking, you know, somebody will have a say somewhere along the line potentially, but it is now starting to look like playoff territory between themselves and GHA at Bridge Hall in a few weeks.
National 2 then, just briefly, Berwick won away at GHK 35-27, a great result for them. Gordonians went top of the table by beating Kirkcaldy 48-14. That's quite a handsome victory for Gordonians. Stumel had a good win at Lasswade 29-7 to go second, and sending Lasswade down to the bottom, while Newton Stewart once again lost a high scoring game at home. They scored 41 points this time. Wasn't enough. Falkirk got 48, but they did go away with 2 bonus points. And certainly Bladnoch Park crowds get plenty of tries to enjoy there, but still only 1 win, but 4 try bonuses and 4 losing bonuses. Berwick have a week off, so no points for them on Saturday. Their National Cup game against Stumel at Scremerston will be played on November the 2nd, but they won't taste league action again until November the 9th. And so to tomorrow's fixtures, weather looking reasonable again, so not expecting any weather-related call-offs, which is good. The first game on the agenda, Curry versus Selkirk. Curry in fine form right now, Selkirk very competitive. Let's hear what the Suitors head coach, Sesh Henderson, has to say this week.
For this week's game, we've got Josh Wells back fit again, as we have Bruce Riddle is available, so we're pretty much up to close to full strength as we can be, which is quite pleasing given it's our 9th game now comes after this Saturday. So we've got to take a lot of heart. We scored 6 tries against Herets last weekend and take that into the Curry game. Scoring 6 tries against Herets, still on the losing side, was pretty disappointing. We gave them a couple of easy ends to get them over the line. But against Curry, it's just going to be, away from home, it's just going to be that wee bit harder. We've got to concentrate on both our attack and defence, and if we keep the same work rate going for the 80 minutes, then I'm sure we'll want to come away with points. We'll be disappointed if we don't come away with points, but it's going to take a big shift, and the boys will be keen to put good 80 minutes in, then knowing that we're going to have a wee cough and a bit of rest time before we hit Watson's in 2 weeks' time.
Sesh Henderson, so Melrose won at Curry a few weeks back. Can Selkirk cause problems?
They can cause them problems. It's a tough gig to go up there. Curry have absolutely got their act together. I've spoken before, they've got a really strong squad. For me, it's the strongest outside the big three in this division. And if Selkirk can come away with a point or 2 points, that's a pretty good result in what is a tough old block of games. But can they cause Curry problems? Absolutely they can.
Well, Sam Matthews, our man, covering that one tomorrow for Rugby Radio, which is on air at 2:30 for 3 hours. And by the way, with the Autumn Internationals happening in November, no Friday Rugby preview programme and no Rugby Radio Saturday show next weekend, but we'll be back on November the 9th with a 4-hour show with lots of 2 o'clock kickoffs, so extended through to the end of March when the clocks go forward again. Edinburgh Accies against Ayr at Rayburn Place. Accies back to winning ways last week at Kelso and back at home as well, but Ayer's juggernaut will be fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, it's not the easiest fixture for the juggernaut, but would you fancy them to take 5 points? Certainly I would. Accies have caused, in previous seasons, they've caused the top teams, the Hoiks, etc., problems at Rayburn Place, and Ayr won't be taking this one lightly. They've got too much professionalism about them for that, but yeah, I still fancy them to come away with 5 points from that one.
Border Derby at Mansfield Park tomorrow, Hoyk versus Kelso. We can hear from both camps now. Director of Rugby at Kelso, Neil Hinnigan, and first Greens boss, Graham Hogg.
Another Border Derby on the horizon for us this week, with Kelso visiting Mansfield Park. Comes at a good time for us after a very poor performance last week up in Glasgow against Glasgow Hawks. Both sides of the ball, we just weren't at the races on Saturday. Defensively, conceded another try bonus point, and attacking-wise, just not getting our attack up and running. Not keeping hold of the ball well enough. Ball retention's a big thing for us. And yeah, we just didn't do it, coughing up possession on our first phase multiple times. So obviously we have been trying to right those wrongs this week. We've put some stuff in place, and we're massively excited for the challenge of Kelso coming up to Hoyk. We had some good games last season, and we're looking forward to getting into it again this week. Some changes this week. Unfortunately, Gareth Welsh has a broken hand from the weekend, so he's going to be out just for a couple of weeks. But fortunately, we've brought in a different position, but Lee Armstrong's now back available, as well as Sean Linton, so that adds some experience into the pack and into the back line. So we're looking forward to welcoming those boys back.
Last week was a tough home match against Accies, where a lot of our guys, they stuck in for 50 minutes, and we were very, very competitive. A couple of defensive errors allowed Accies to get a bit of momentum around that 50-minute mark, and then, to be fair, Accies were very clinical in the last 20 minutes and put us to the sword. So there's a fair bit of learnings in there for everyone that was there. This week, to join the list of absentees, Adam Hall's away on holiday. Angus Utterson has got a knock on the shoulder, so we lose 2 centres from the squad from last week. That might give opportunities to others, some of the youngsters, again, from the Sharks that are playing fairly well in that league as well, have to make the step up. So it does come with some positives that these guys will get some exposure to this level. So we've got to look at that and nurture that as well at the same time. So a really difficult place to be in, but there will be good come of it, and we've got to keep working really hard to get that 80-minute performance. We're playing in fits and starts at the moment, and the coaches are really working hard to try and get that 80-minute performance in and get a result that we deserve, and that might just kickstart our season back up again. So a lot to play for at Mansfield Park, obviously, but those are one of the most difficult places to go at the best of times. So we'll be up against it, but it's one that we can go to with a little bit of optimism, given that we are getting things right in periods of different games in the last couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks. So hopefully we can string 60, 70, 80 minutes together, and you just never know.
So both coming off the back of a loss last Saturday. Kelso only one win back in August, both sides with a big injury list. Hoyk in 9th, Kelso 11th, 9 points between them. A Hoyk win could open up a lot of daylight between the two, but a Kelso win will kickstart their season, bring a bit of belief back into the club as well.
Oh, definitely, and it's what they need, and it's what they need pretty quickly, Stuart. And they need a few of them as well if they're going to get themselves out the mire that they find themselves in. And yeah, it should be a good game. They're toughish to call. If Kelso had been at full strength, I'd have been a bit more confident in the outcome for them, or being a bit more competitive. I fancy Hoyk to win that on current form, Stuart, and as you mentioned, a bit more daylight opens up between them and the teams around them. But yeah, tough assignment for Kelso in a block of games whereby they're all pretty tough.
Well, that's our featured commentary match tomorrow. Dale Clancy and David Ferguson will be our commentary team down there at Mansfield Park. Heriots versus Glasgow Hawks at Golden Acre. Only Watsonians have beaten Heriots this season. Hawks going well, but they'll certainly need to go up a level to get something out of this one. Now, very, very interesting one. Mar against Melrose. Joint head coach of Melrose, Scott White's job is to get his team back to winning ways after a loss at Ayr last Saturday. Let's hear what he has to say.
Last week went up to Ayr and I struggled in multiple kind of facets of the game. So look, I think it was a good time to kind of just pull people in on Tuesday night and just have a look in terms of where we are within the season. So we're 8 games in, won 4, lost 4. We've got 4 games left to the turn of the season. We've got 3 league games and then we've got Peebles on the 17th of November. So, kind of 2/3 of the first way through the season. So there's a wee bit of frustration there in terms of, we've probably not fired yet in terms of properly. But, we're probably in the same breath, we probably take the results that we've got with a few frustrations. So yeah, everybody got through last week unscathed, which is excellent in terms of, and we've got 4 or 5 boys returning over the next couple of weeks as well, which is excellent in terms of makes competition for places strong. So this week, front row will stay the same as last week. Middle row will stay the same. Back row, we've actually not decided yet. Elliot Rovin's back this week, so he potentially come back into the mix. It's good to have those options. The back line as well. It's obviously got a few boys carrying a couple of niggles that, we may look to kind of shuffle the back line round about. So team-wise, everybody's available from last week, and then you add in Elliot Rovin, you add in probably Struan Hutchison somewhere as well. So there's a couple of decisions to make in and around that with half-back. So we're looking forward to it. Going up to Mar, back on the road this week. So, it's going to be difficult, but I think it's a hugely important game for us, given where we are league-wise in terms of Mar just below us as well. So, it's a game we're obviously really targeting to look to hopefully go up there and win, to just create that gap a wee bit more and obviously put ourselves back in the mix because the league is super, super tight. Last week we started in 4th, finished in 8th, and then this week we could start in 8th and potentially finish in 4th. So, it's important to stay with the pack and keep ourselves in the mix. So, boys are really excited about it and hugely looking forward to going up to Fullerton Park.
Scott White. Now, in recent weeks, Mar have conceded an average of 56 points per game to tumble down the table. They've lost once this season at Fullerton Park. That was against Ayr. And Melrose have only lost once on the road. Donald Crawford will be there for us. But, it's an intriguing one, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's maybe the toughest one to call this weekend. And it's possibly the game this weekend by virtue of the fact that if Melrose win, there's serious daylight between them and Mar, and if Hoyk beat Kelso as well, then it's really problematic for Mar as well. So a lot riding on this for the Fullerton Park men. I would imagine they will be going to throw absolutely everything into this. I expect it to be a real ding dong, but Melrose, until they came unstuck on the road at Ayr, have been the away day specialists, and based on this season's form, if anybody can go through there and come away with a victory on current form, away form, other than the blip at Ayr, then it's Melrose. It's a tough one to call.
Well, the other game is Watsonians against Musselburgh at Mireside, which should again go one way, you would think, purely based on current form.
Yeah, I think so, Stuart, and that's no disrespect to Musselburgh. The table doesn't lie, and if Watsonians can put 73 points without reply on Mar at home, then it could be a long afternoon for Musselburgh as well. But fair play to Musselburgh, they got the point last week against Curry when they were absolutely dead and buried, and they'll be looking for more of the same kind of grit that they had in that second half last week.
International one then, and it's Dundee at home to Peebles. Here's Peebles head coach Graham Patterson.
And they're going to be desperate. They're going to be wounded from the results so far, so we have to approach this to see that they're dangerous. That's a dangerous animal that you're facing. We need to respect them, and we know that if we don't put in a quality performance, Dundee are good enough to produce a winning performance, and they've come very close on a number of occasions so far this season, so we need to ensure that it isn't against us, and by respecting them as a team and ensuring that we get that good quality performance out of the guys on Saturday to finish off that first half of the season in a positive manner. We've been lucky, not too many injuries have blighted us over the season so far, but unfortunately on Saturday one of the top performers in Ewan Murray has sustained quite a serious injury, and he's dislocated his elbow and fractured his arm in 3 places during a fairly innocuous kind of tackle situation, and then somebody just unfortunately accidentally fallen on that arm as he put his arm out, so he's going to be out for some considerable time, so wish him well in a speedy recovery. What we will have though is we have Rue Smith back contesting the front row. It's good to have a young guy with a lot of talent and good prospect back in our squad to really kind of bolster the physical nature of the set piece and also his carrying. In terms of mixing up the squad a wee bit, where Kel McKeever and Ollie Furness will get the nod to start after impressing, as I said earlier, the performance off the bench, so they are in their starting berths this week. And we also bring on into the squad a new member of the team in Archie Winnington Ingram, who has joined us, having moved to Peebles from Edinburgh, previously played for Edinburgh Accies, and he's going to make his debut, I would hope, off the bench this Saturday. So we're looking forward to the game on Saturday. We know it's going to be tough. We have to approach it with the right mindset, and hopefully we'll come out of that with the result that we need.
So Peebles, a great win last week against Jed Forest. Dundee without a win but are scoring tries last week, as we mentioned, went 19-0 up at Stirling County. So Peebles will be very wary of that, and as we heard from Graham just now, he's certainly not thinking that they have to just get off the bus and play some rugby.
No, he's too smart for that, and he's got a squad of men there that are probably too savvy for that as well. They'll be well aware that Dundee were 19-0 up at Bridgehaw, so they absolutely won't be taking this lightly. It's a big game for Peebles, because if they can back up that brilliant win against Jed with even 4 points on the road this week, never mind 5, then they really are starting to think about safety. They won't admit it at this stage, but if they're sitting there on 20 odd points, then the teams below them have got a bit of catching up to do. But Dundee will have this one marked on the calendar. They need wins, they need them quickly, and it needs to start for them tomorrow.
Gala were in control at Meggetland last weekend, but lost to Boroughmuir 39-30, as we've just mentioned, so they've dropped to 5th place in the league, and they're unbeaten at home, but they welcome Stirling County. Their head coach, Stuart and Robin.
Travelled up to Meggetland to play Boroughmuir at the weekend, and we had a great start to the game, developing a 10-0 lead. Boroughmuir then snuck a try back against the run of play, really, and it was a bit of a nip and tuck affair. And we got to half time 25-19 ahead after what has to be said is our best attacking play of the season so far, which included a great team try finished off by Richie Mitchell after a good 50-metre break by Rob Irvin, who was really industrious for us at the weekend there. Going in at half time, very happy. We had let Boroughmuir stay in the game, because we certainly felt, and we did look like we were by far the most dominant team. Boroughmuir's tries tended to be a bounce of the ball, a decision, etc. So quite happy at half time, had a good chat. We just needed to keep the same sort of things going. And just after half time, we were able to get into a 11-point lead at 30 points to 19 through a Sam Smith try. Again, a really good team try, which Sam finished off. From then, we were up the pitch maybe about with a quarter of the match to go, and then in a really dominant attacking position, we received a yellow card for an infringement at a ruck, which we just had to deal with. But what really hurt us after that was a yellow card within another minute. So we were down to 13 players. This gave Boroughmuir a big boost, and they scored 2 converted tries in this time to take the score past us. We then got our yellow cards back on, but we were then chasing the game. And Boroughmuir got 2 kickable penalties, which put the 9-point gap in there. Really disappointing, as it was a dominant performance from us, but the yellow cards really hurt, and we have to learn our lessons from them. Moving on to this week. This week is going to be a big challenge against a big, physical, well-drilled Stirling team, but they're coming down to Netherdale, so we've got to be confident and play a bit of that attacking rugby that got us the bonus point against Boroughmuir. You know, we scored a lot of good tries. There was a confidence in attack, and we've just got to develop that along with tightening up our defence a little bit, and we'll be looking forward to welcoming Stirling to Netherdale at the weekend there. There is some good news coming as well after this week. If we get through without too many injury issues, we have got a lot of players coming back that are on the positive journey back for the aim for next league game against Highland. So that's a real positive for the club. There's a lot of good work being put in by our physio department, but we'll look to welcome back a good few players in the next couple of weeks. So we just keep working hard and keep working together for the results.
So, plenty for Ewan to talk about there, and Gala at home to Stirling County. Your first look at Stirling as well. You'll be there for us tomorrow at Netherdale, and as I mentioned, Gala unbeaten at home, so this has a bit of intrigue as well. And Gala will be heartened by Dundee's result there, and I would imagine they're going to go all guns blazing.
Oh, and why not? They've been brilliant at home so far this season. This is the toughest test, of course, though. Or their credentials at home, and Stirling will be desperate. Stirling can't not get 5 points here, and they probably can't not get 5 points for the remainder of their games now, other than the one against GHA at Bridgehaw. So they're coming down needing something, and Gala, free hit territory, but they want to defend the castle. They're unbeaten at home so far this season, but again, if they can come away with anything from that game, then I think that represents another good result in what's been generally a pretty good season for the Maroons so far.
It's interesting as well because Dundee obviously went to Bridgehaw with a free hit, as we mentioned, went absolutely tanked into Stirling County, got 3 tries straight on the board and tried to hang on. Obviously they hung on for about 60 minutes, and then Stirling County had too much firepower and off they went. Now, of course, we remember the Gala game against Biggar, which was a 13-10, a bit of a dour affair, but that's another way that Gala could play it. They could play it totally defensively and keep the score down.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because what do you do? Do you go hell for leather and try and get early tries, and then you're thinking, right, well, we get 1 point if we get 4 tries? Or do you think, well, we stay in the fight, and if we get beat, then hopefully it'll be by less than 7 and we'll get 1 point that way? And reading between the lines, that's maybe the latter's maybe what Melrose did at Ayr last week. Kicking penalties at goal while 20 odd points down in the first half. So there's different ways to skin a cat, but yeah, I think you just have to try and get, for me anyway, you just have to try and get as many points on the board as early in the game as possible, and then go from there.
Should be an interesting one. You'll be down there by asking the questions pre-match and probably trying to find out what the plan is, certainly for Gala on this one. But of course, let's also remember Stirling County haven't dropped a try bonus so far this season. GHA have, they haven't.
Yeah, and like I say, Stirling looking to keep going with the 5 pointers with that potential big game against GHA in mind. And yeah, they've got the firepower, they've got the strike players, they've got the ex-Super Series guys, and of course they will therefore be looking to take 5 points from every game that they go into in this league.
GHA v Biggar up to 4th in the table. GHA owe their fans another big scoring performance after coming close to losing to Peebles a few weeks ago, so they'll be wanting to change things around a little bit after 2 weeks.
Yeah, brilliant win away from home, albeit still in Glasgow. Last week, Biggar, nothing to lose coming into this. Fancy GHA for the 5 points, but Biggar are never a pushover. A team coached by Craig Borthwick's going to stand up and fight. So yeah, nothing to lose for Biggar going into it, but the smart money would be on GHA for this one.
Highland versus Boroughmuir at Canal Park. Boroughmuir leapfrogged Highland last week, and Highland want to do the same to them tomorrow.
Oh, definitely. This is a huge game in the context of the season for both. Really difficult one to call. Whoever wins this gets up to minimally 17. If Highland win, they're up to 17 points minimally. Boroughmuir are up to 18 points minimally. Jed are playing Glasgow Accies tomorrow. That's certainly not a given for Jed. So if Accies can come away with a result at Riverside, then Boroughmuir and Highland can get right back in the safety mix and put a spanner in Jed's works as well. So yeah, massive game at Canal Park tomorrow, and a really difficult one to call. Fancy Boroughmuir maybe just shade this one.
Be very, very interesting indeed. Jed Forrester, as you mentioned, are playing Glasgow Accies at Riverside Park. Here's Jed head coach Stuart Johnson.
After a really disappointing defensive performance against Peebles on Saturday, we're back at Riverside this week to take on Glasgow Accies. Obviously not going to be an easy game. Glasgow Accies are going well and they're sitting third in the league. But if you look at us, it's let's say we're back at home. We've had a really big focus on defence on Tuesday night, and we've actually got a joint session against Hawick on Thursday night to prepare for this week, which will help us out. Obviously, also help Hawick out in their big game on Saturday as well. So, massive thanks to Hawick for that. In terms of team news for us, obviously we've got Lewis Young, Logan Kerr, Matthew Beaton, Ryan Briggs, Kyle Grieve, Davy Campbell, all back this week, and they were all playing really well before they had a last weekend off. So they'll come in and add to the squad hopefully, and obviously after the weekend there, as I've already said, it was disappointing in terms of defence, so some boys are going to have to drop out, but obviously all we're looking for is a reaction of the guys that drop out and the guys that come in and the guys that stay in. Again, just need to continue with the performances and add to it, and as I say, hopefully we can turn over a decent Glasgow Accies side.
Well, you saw Jed last week. In terms of quality of tries, Jed probably got the more pleasing on the eye scores, with Aaron Weatherhead and Rory Marshall's efforts very, very good indeed. But you get the same amount of points for a pushover try, and that's something that Peebles do very, very well. Stuart, though, talking about the game afterwards, they need to tighten up their defence, particularly against Glasgow Accies.
Yeah, they will need to tighten up defensively, and yes, Stuart mentioned that post-game kind of in frustrated manner, because he's right, they can score tries, Jed, and so you're always sort of thinking, well, at least 1 point from a 4-try bonus, but yeah, and you're thinking, well, they need to score tries, because if they've got a leaky defence, it's hard to see past Accies tomorrow. But Riverside's never an easy place to go, and if Jed can get their dander up with 2 or 3 boys back that they never had last week, then it's banana skinish for Glasgow Accies, but I would fancy them to prevail there.
Well, National 2, as we mentioned earlier, has no game for Berwick. Their turn to sit it out in the 9-team league, but we'll take a look at the fixtures, because some of the games will affect the table and where Berwick end up come 5 o'clock tomorrow. Falkirk against Gordonians, 3rd against 1st there. Kirkcaldy v GHK, 4th against 6th. Preston Lodge against Lasswade, 7th against 9th. And the one which intrigues me a lot, Inverleith, Stumel versus Newton Stewart. Stumel in 2nd place, Newton Stewart in 8th. But, high scoring. And I know Stumel like to run the ball as well, so we could get another high scoring game there.
Oh yeah, there's been the Newton Stewart games this season look like they've been a joy to behold. Not always the right result for them, of course, and that's going to be a tough game for them up there. It's a long old trip as well. So yeah, that's an intriguing one, as is the one at Preston Lodge against Lasswade. If Preston Lodge can win that, they get a bit closer to safety. Then of course at the top you've got Falkirk v Gordonians. Gordonians possibly the surprise package in this division, currently at top of the table, but a very tricky place to go, Falkirk, so that should be a good game as well.
Into the East League, and in East League 1, Langham are at home to Forrester. Langham's head coach is Craig Hislop.
Saturday's game against Harrington was a real game for the neutral. Harrington took an early half-time lead, 24 points to 0, which is a bit disappointing for us as a team. Defensively we were found wanting, but to be fair to opposition, the desire to play rugby and move it wide, and their 2 18-year-old wingers had gas to burn, and were found wanting on more than one occasion. Half time we had a talk, got squared up, and the lads came with the hatch, scoring 2 quick tries, which we talked about at half time, trying to change the momentum. We followed that up with another 3 tries during the game, take us to a 33-29 lead, which we managed to hold on for the last 10 minutes. So it was really pleasing second half performance. And as I say, for a neutral, watching that game of rugby, it was a really entertaining affair. That I can say that I enjoyed it myself at certain points. This week we welcome Forrester down to Milton, so back-to-back home games for us. Last week Callum Henderson came back into the squad after half an hour and held up, and it was a massive contribution, and he's welcome back in the team for us. We're hoping to have our vice-captain Colin Jeffrey back for injury this week, and hopefully he's okay and good to go. So there's some positive signs and some lads coming back, but we are still missing our captain ligament injury, Aidan Wilson shoulder, Kerr Gordon fractured finger, Fraser Mitchell rotary cuff, and Keith Reid also with an issue with his finger that required an operation. So we're not a big squad, so we've had some testing sizes of our squad, 19 players, 18 players, but this week we're 22, so all good and hopeful to get another win. Push us further up this table.
In East League 2, Hoyt Quinns travel to Dunbar to take on the league leaders. Hoyt Quinns' Liam Graham.
There's been a real sense of positivity around the club the past few weeks, getting some really good victories home and away, but again another struggle this weekend to try and get a squad out due to injuries again and more work commitments. We know it's a big ask to go to Edinburgh every other week, what we've been doing this season, but we hopefully will be getting a squad together that will be able to compete against this Dunbar team that's really blew the league away at the minute. We could see by the result last week going up to a Leith team that a couple of weeks ago were sitting second and third in the league. Putting 80 points past them. So that was away from home as well. So we know that this Dunbar team are the ones to beat this season in the league. So hopefully we can go up there and give them a really good game. Hopefully we can come away with something towards the end of the game. But we know we'll have to stick in and move our game to another level, defensively and attacking wise. Their defence looks really strong. They've only conceded 74 points this season, so to try and break that down, we know we'll have to move wisely with penalties that we get, and we know we'll just have to try and be patient on the ball as well. I think that's probably one of our big things we're working on this season, trying to be more patient with ball in hand. So hopefully this week we can really come into fruition. Go up there, as I said, with a few missing. Hopefully we'll go welcome a couple of players back that have been released from Hawick this weekend. So hopefully we can welcome them back and they really will boost our squad. Hopefully give us another couple of good quality players. And hopefully this weekend we can go out there and just really play for the squad and hopefully get something out of the game.
East League 3, and the big one is Earlston against Hoyt Lindeen, both unbeaten. And we can hear now from Lindeen's Kieran Murphy and first head coach of Earlston, Cammy Hill.
Last weekend we travelled to Lismore in a game that last season we really struggled with up there. One of the games that was probably part of the reason that our league challenge fell apart. So we're pretty wary going up this time round, knowing exactly what Lismore could do. But in the end, things couldn't have went any better. We went up and we came away with a bonus point win. Dominated for long periods of the game, which was really good, obviously, in the build-up to the top-of-the-table clash this weekend. So this weekend, welcome Hoyt Lindeen to the Hawk, in which will be a massive, massive match for both clubs. We played them twice last season in friendlies, and they were really good games. But obviously, both teams have changed a lot since then, adding a lot of talent to obviously both squads. So I imagine we'll be in for a really, really good game of rugby. They've started the season really well, beating some good teams in the last few weeks. It's we've really taken notice of. Obviously, doing that, they're keeping the pressure on us, which I think's really helped our lads focus in, because you're knowing that you can't really afford to be slipping up, or Lindeen are just going to jump above you in the league, and then they're the ones chasing, and it's always going to be hard. But looking at the squad for this weekend, there could be a few changes to last weekend due to work and unavailabilities, which isn't ideal, going into probably our biggest game of the season so far. But we've got a good pool of players to select from, still mid to late 20s, so that's really good. Here's hoping for a good game of rugby at the weekend and hopefully 4 or 5 points to come away at the end of it.
Massive game for both clubs. Eddleston have started the season perfect on 25 points after 5 games, and we are just one behind on 24. We unfortunately never got a bonus point against Lismore, and Eddleston managed to sneak one in the last play at the weekend. So as you can see, there's not very much between the sides, and going on results, it should be a close game, and it's certainly great to see both teams back at the top end of the table, challenging again, because we have over the last seasons both had their difficulties. Eddleston have had a couple of good seasons. It's certainly great to see us back at the top end again. Going for last week, we scored a lot of points once again. Looked good in attack, we were sharp, but we were maybe slipped up a couple of times in defence, which we'll need to tighten up for this weekend against a side that are also scoring a lot of points. So it should be a good encounter between the two teams. In terms of our team, sadly, massive game out this year, missing a few key players. Graham Colville, try scoring machine, so that's a big miss.
Eli Hamilton, been a great asset this season. Our kicker, we've lost him. Kind of been without our kicker, Sean Gaswood, for a few weeks, so somebody else, maybe like Matthew Mallon, will probably had to take up the kicking duties this week. And missing Damien Vergacci, Aidan Fairbairn, and been missing the likes of Jordan White, Jack Wilson the last few weeks and that. So there's a few missing, but it's a massive chance for the rest of the boys to step up and get the result and show why they should be in the team for the rest of the year. Because if you can't get yourself up for a game like this, then what's the point in playing?
There's been a real sense of positivity around the club the past few weeks, getting some really good victories home and away, but again another struggle this weekend to try and get a squad out due to injuries again and more work commitments. We know it's a big ask to go to Edinburgh every other week, what we've been doing this season, but we hopefully will be getting a squad together that will be able to compete against this Dunbar team that's really blew the league away at the minute. We could see by the result last week going up to a Leith team that a couple of weeks ago were sitting second and third in the league, putting 80 points past them. So that was away from home as well. So we know that this Dunbar team are the ones to beat this season in the league. So hopefully we can go up there and give them a really good game. Hopefully we can come away with something towards the end of the game. But we know we'll have to stick in and move our game to another level, defensively and attacking wise. Their defence looks really strong. They've only conceded 74 points this season, so to try and break that down, we know we'll have to move wisely with penalties that we get, and we know we'll just have to try and be patient on the ball as well. I think that's probably one of our big things we're working on this season, trying to be more patient with ball in hand. So hopefully this week we can really come into fruition. Go up there, as I said, with a few missing. Hopefully we'll go welcome a couple of players back that have been released from Hawick this weekend. So hopefully we can welcome them back and they really will boost our squad. Hopefully give us another couple of good quality players. And hopefully this weekend we can go out there and just really play for the squad.
Also in East League 3, Duns are at Inverleith and Galloway M travel to Lismore. That's it for this edition of the Friday Rugby Preview. We're on air at 2:30 tomorrow for 3 hours with Hawick against Kelso in the Premiership, our feature game with Dale Clancy and David Ferguson. Robin's at Netherdale covering Gala against Stirling County. Donald Crawford will be at Mar v Melrose. Sam Matthews will be taking in Curry versus Selkirk. We'll have all the latest score updates throughout the show, and Friday Rugby Preview will be back in a couple of weeks' time after the Club Rugby break. But for now, from Robin and me, bye for now.
The Friday Rugby Preview with Stuart Cameron.